Welcome, candidates, to our town hall. We are giving you the opportunity to present yourselves and your views to the people of California Assembly District 1. And because we've had several elections already this year, you're well knowing how to do this. Each candidate will be given a question, and each candidate will respond to every question. It will go in a rotating order so that no candidate gets to be first all the time. They will have 2 minutes at the beginning to present themselves to you, and they will have 1 minute to respond to each question. At the end, there will be a 3-minute opportunity for each candidate to summarize what they have said during the night and leave you with exactly the information that they want you to take home. Penny, right here, will be keeping track of the order in which the candidates go because sometimes I forget. Terry will be keeping track of the time. He will hold up the yellow flag for a 15-second warning, and then he will hold up the red flag when 1 minute is up. And if the candidates go over that minute, I will personally go up there and drag them off the stage and slap their wrists.
And she's not kidding.
I'm harsh. I want the candidates to know and to remind the audience that you are polite and you are civil, but they are politically savvy and well-informed. You're not going to pull anything over their eyes here. They are impassioned on the issues that present themselves to Northern California. The questions that I will be asking are not my questions, they are your questions. I just got them, collated them, and sorted them, so they will be in some sort of order, and I hope that whatever question you have will be covered. I'm afraid I have far more than we will be able to get to. We will try to wrap this up by 8 o'clock, at which time the candidates will be lying on the floor gasping and panting for air. What this audience wants to hear tonight are specifics, not platitudes. They want to know your action plans, not your opinions, and they will be able to tell the difference because they're smart. Okay, then take a deep breath, get a drink of water, and I'm going to present the first question.
No intro.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, 2 minutes, and because Joe is on my left, and I don't want to appear biased, we're going to start with the left. And Joe, you may go first with your 2 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Joe Turner. I'm a resident of Lassen County. I spent 17 years enlisted in the Army National Guard. I am medically retired from the military a few short years after I went to Afghanistan. I've been passionate about the state of Jefferson long before Mark and Terry revised the movement, and I've also been very much involved in the process, and Janet knows how many hours we spent working on things together. I believe that we're in a fight or flight situation, and we have to treat this more like war, because politics as usual has failed us as usual. We have to fight for our rights. We have to fight for our property. We have to fight. We have to encourage civil disobedience when it is appropriate and lawful. We have to nullify these illegal and unconstitutional laws every way we can. We have to sue California back into compliance, and instead of reaching out across the aisle, we have to reach out to other states because we are a union, and we understand the way the union works, and we have to get the other states involved through the courts, through the Congress, through other actions of the state. We have to get them involved to put pressure on California to make California a republic again, and for it not to be an oligarchy, which is just a government ruled by a few short people by a few people. Also, I'm a very staunch advocate of all things with our rights, and I want to do something like make machine guns great again. The NFA is completely unconstitutional, illegal. Not only does California need to be fixed, but the union needs to be fixed on that as well. And I'd really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I am Patrick Henry Jones. I think most of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I grew up here in Shasta County. I'm 51 years old. I'm married. My beautiful wife, Lori, is at the back of the room. I grew up in a small family gun shop here in Reading, and so this is my 40th year, maybe a little bit more. And so I started at a very young age in the private sector, and working was a part of our family life, and it was with my brothers and sisters. So I have over 40 years at Jones's Ford Gun Shop. I also served on the Reading City Council from 2006 to 2014, probably during the toughest time in the city's history through the global recession. And that taught me a lot about local government, and it taught me a lot about Sacramento and how much Sacramento was out of touch with District 1. And that's really what prompted me to run. It's what prompted me to run for City Council in 2002, was I was not happy with the votes that I saw happening in my own city. And that's exactly why I'm running for State Assembly District 1, is because I'm not happy with what I see happening in California, and I wasn't happy with all the votes of our past assemblymen. I think we can do better. Now, being a small businessman for over 40 years in a debt-free business, I'm pretty sure Sacramento cannot say that, and having elected experience, it makes me the most qualified person in this race. I'm also the oldest in this race, and I'm also the only person who has gray hair in this race. And you know, me and my wife Lori, we've really enjoyed getting out in the district, learning some of the issues that face Siskiyou County and Modoc County and Nevada County and Upper Placer County. And there are some serious issues out there that need leadership today more than ever, and they simply are not being represented. And that's what we hear in every county, county after county. They are not getting the leader that they need, and they're not getting the leadership. I believe I'm the right guy at the right time, and I'd appreciate your vote this August 27th. Thank you.
Hello? There we go. How's it going, everyone? You know, the role of a legislator is to represent the people. I have platform issues that I want to talk with you about tonight. But at the end of the day, the role of a legislator is to represent the people. How can you do that if you are not active and present in this community? So to the candidates here tonight, I want to take 10 seconds of my time to thank you for just being present. Can we please have a round of applause for the candidates? My name is Lane Rickard. I got into politics when I was 18 years old. 18. I ran a campaign for city council, a successful campaign. And you know, I like to think that when I was running that campaign, the person that was the candidate saw some spark of light in me, something that no one's seen before. But honestly, I'm pretty sure it was just free labor. But it was through that I really started to get a knack for political strategy. After running that campaign, I began interning for State Senator Ted Gaines. After about a week, I ended up working in the Reading District Office as a field representative. I ended my career in the California State Senate, running the Reading District Office. The State Senate District 1 is one of the largest Senate districts in this state. It's actually bigger than most states. Senator Gaines had a very difficult time making it up to this northern part of the district. I make no excuse for that. I understand that it is a great thing to be a business owner, but when you're running for a legislator, that requires a full-time job. And I'll make this promise to you right now. When I'm not active and present in this community, when I'm not active and present in Sacramento fighting for issues that you deem important, I'll be right here in this community. I will be a face that you will remember. I want to carry the integrity and pride of this community.
Excuse me, Lane. When we hold up the red for anybody that you should stop.
Oh, great, sorry.
Okay.
I now know the rules and I'm looking forward to a conversation.
Okay, first question, and because Joe started with the 2 minutes, we will be starting with Patrick Jones. As a legislator in California, you will be asked to take an oath of office, and that oath is based on the California Constitution, the federal Constitution, and because the Declaration of Independence is also a part of our founding documents, it is to that too. According to the Declaration, and this is going to be a very short answer. I'm going to give you 15 seconds to answer this one. According to the Declaration of Independence, what is the primary purpose of government? And by extension, that will be the purpose for you as an assemblyman and your representation of the people? What is that primary purpose? Patrick?
So the way I believe it is government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And that's what it means to me.
I will defend the inalienable rights of the people that were granted by the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
The purpose of government is to secure our liberties for our posterity and our liberty. That's it.
Thank you, and you managed to do that within 15 seconds. Okay. Let's start with since you all recognize that you are here to protect our rights, let's look at some of those rights. We know that the state of California is good at passing legislation that restricts our rights, and right now they are after our water. So, what plan do you have to stop the state from interfering in the use of our water through their laws that are going to force us not only to meter our wells, tax our water usage, and limit us to 55 gallons a day or some other draconian idea? So, Lane, you're first. What are you going to do to protect our water rights?
We have had 50 years to update our water reservoir systems. The state legislature has decided not to do that. I think what we saw with the recent drought is a prime example of what happens when we're not updating our infrastructure, and this is our water reservoir management systems. We have great water reservoir management systems. Southern California doesn't. Legislators need to improve water reservoirs down south so they can make sure that they're getting the right water they need so they don't have to steal ours. One of the recent bills that happened while I was working in the Senate was a regulation fee for farmers having to spend up to $50,000 in equipment to regulate the water intake. The bill was so quick and it had no research in it. They would measure the water that came into their farms, but not the water that went out to the farms. So say you had a windmill going down a river, and that was collecting water. It did not record the water going back into the river. That's how crazy some of these legislations and policies are. I think that could be a simple solution. You know, someone to go and talk to and say, hey, let's just start by fixing that.
It's simple. You have to find the common goals with the Democrats in order to convince them to expand our water storage. And if they will not be convinced, we have to get coalitions of people together and sue them into getting away from our rights and backing off of our property. We can try to be persuasive, we could try to work with them as much as we want, but we know the solution is to protect our land, protect our water rights, our property rights. We have to try to convince them otherwise that they need to stay away from our rights since they want to keep infringing on them. But if they won't, we have to use the means that we have, and we have to sue California. And on certain things like water rights, that would call for civil disobedience as far as I'm concerned. If they come onto my property to try to steal my property from that and prohibit me from using my property, I'm using my property.
So every few years when we start seeing a drought, we start getting into the issue of water. There is a big issue with water, obviously, for Southern California, less of an issue for us, but they always want to take our water. We saw issues within the city of Redding where we have a policy, the Redding Area Water Council, it's called ROC, and our policy in the city of Redding, we're a member of that group, is to not sell water outside of our county. But in a drought year, that's exactly what the city of Redding did. They violated their own policies, and they helped the McConnell Foundation gather or sell water at a profit, a big profit, out of county. So when we start seeing the acre price go up, you start seeing governments break their own rules, and in the case of California, breaking laws. The way you have to stop it is with groups of people and pressure. We're certainly in a minority position, so we can't pass or stop anything from happening, but with groups and groups of people putting pressure on, that is one way to be successful in the state of California, because the next drought we have, you'll start seeing the state try to take advantage of traditional water rights, whether it's the city or the county, and so it is an issue.
Okay, Joe, let's continue talking about water, and I think you brought this issue up. We have dams within Assembly District 1 that are important to Siskiyou County, and we also have a dam in Shasta County, although I can't remember the name of it. You know, it's that little one up the highway here. Where do you stand on the removal of the Klamath River dams, and where do you stand on the raising of Shasta Dam?
That's pretty simple. The agreement between California and Oregon is unconstitutional to remove the dams. They don't have the authority to do that, and they need to stay out of that. We need to keep our dams. We need to increase our water capacity. We need to not just raise Shasta Dam. We need to fix the Oroville Dam. We need to upgrade other dams and build more dams. And we need to capture more dams and have more hydroelectric power. And we need to be able to go through an entire drought season without having to ration, because we have technology. There's no reason we should be so stupid not to use it.
So first, I am in favor of raising Shasta Dam the 18 feet, and I think even though there's a cost to it in the long term, keep in mind that the dam was built at $34 million and finished in 1945, and look at the value that that has served between flood protection and just hydroelectric power. So very, very profitable, and so I think by raising it the extra 18 feet would also be very profitable. On July 19th, I went up to Siskiyou County to take a look at Iron Gate Dam and Copco Dam, and to see firsthand the devastation of what would happen of taking these 4 dams out, 1 in Oregon and 3 in California. And it violates every bit of common sense, and that's the problem with politicians. They tend to not have any. And the effort to remove these dams, the goal is a goal that they call rewilding. They want to put everything back to the way that it was. Of course, people aren't considered as such. And so you have no flood control, water quality, sediment, all these major issues that have been proven over and over will be there and affecting folks in Siskiyou County. And I even put that in one of my radio ads for all counties because it's important everywhere.
I think a huge problem is if we raise Shasta Dam, that's not going to stop our southern counterparts from still stealing our water. We need to improve our water reservoir systems all throughout California. I would love to take a look at the monetary benefits that could come from raising the Shasta Dam, and then at that point I would make an educated decision on it. In terms of the Klamath Dam, the Siskiyou County is not in favor of removing those dams, and therefore neither am I. I've looked at the direct damages that will happen to the local property around the area. I've looked at how the water will be affected for residents right after the removal of the dams, and I've seen how it can affect the community as a whole. So no, I'm not for removing the Klamath dams.
Okay, Patrick, this one goes to you first. Traditionally, Assembly District 1 has been very strong on logging and mining activities. Well, what can you do to return us to that economy?
Well, we have to. There's just no other way about it. If we do not start managing our force, we're going to see what happened in Paradise and what happened here in our own county return again and again. I think there is the ability to reach across the aisle today to start managing our force and thinning them down. Not only does it reduce the fire risk greatly, and we've seen firsthand the devastation of that now, and I think there's motivation in Sacramento to start seriously addressing our unhealthy force. Also, as you do so, you improve the watershed greatly, which is not talked about a lot, but it'll improve all the water in the streams and rivers that are running to the south, and you also improve the habitat. We have great habitat loss in our forest today because of the mismanagement. So you have to fight hard for those things, and I believe there'll be some reaching across the aisle to be able to get this accomplished. And while our forests are maybe not important to people in other districts, they're very important to us, and I think if we showed them the devastation that is about to happen, what we've already seen and what is about to happen, I think there'll be motivation to help fix it.
When Governor Brown made it up north to see the devastations that had happened to the Carr Fire, I think he was truly enlightened. I didn't once hear him talk about global warming being at fault. We need to work with California legislators to develop fire prevention strategies towards making sure that disaster like that never happens again. And one of those ways is reducing tree density levels. We have had higher tree density levels than we have in the past 100 years in California's history. When the drought had happened, we saw what happened with the trees. It was timber waiting to be set ablaze. We need to reduce our ground fuels, and we need to try and bring lumbering back to this community. That is a great push for responsible infrastructure in the North State. I think it's something we should return back to the North State.
We all pretty much agree that we need to bring back the timber industry and thin our forests and manage our forests. But how are we going to do that? How are we now Senator Brian Dahle has proven that you cannot bring people from the South up to simply show them what our way of life is, to get them to stop infringing on our rights and to allow us to manage our property. If it would work, it would have worked already. It hasn't. I honestly believe that there's a great way to try to convince California to get a head start on it if we can't get the proper representation to actually change the rules ourselves. And that's bringing in the government public employees unions and reminding them about their unfunded liabilities for their pensions. That's something that I know that Patrick has talked a lot about. And I've been mulling over, well, what's a good way to try to get that to be fixed? Get the unions involved and tell them, hey, bring back the timber industry, thin the forest, manage the forest, there's timber receipts in there, that can go to helping your pensions.
Okay, Lane, I think we're back to you to start. Let's talk about sanctuary states, immigration, and illegal aliens. You all are sitting up here representing the Republican Party. In California, what is the Republican plan to repeal SB 54, which allows for California to be a sanctuary state, and how will you work towards that end?
I would like to briefly just respond once to the last question. If it wasn't for Senator Dahle going down to meet with our southern legislators, biomass would have been completely destroyed in this part of the district. So there is times where you can work across the aisle to find immediate issues to problems that aren't partisan politics. Now, for sanctuary state, we don't have an effective plan. Republicans do not have an effective plan towards repealing sanctuary state. You want to know why? There's 19 California legislators in the Assembly. Compare that to the 61 Democrats. How are we going to pass anything if we don't reignite the Republican Party in California? Before we even start having these conversations about partisan politics, which is terrifying, we need to bring back the Republican Party. Let's just get 30 legislators at the start, so we can start fighting these ridiculous tax bills that are coming through California. In the 2019 legislation session, there was 365 tax bills that went through. Over that was half of tax increases.
California is in a state of sedition. SB 54 is a violation of Title 8, Section 1324. California is harboring illegal aliens. It's against federal law. California needs to be sued in submission, and the states need to put California back in its place. There are certain things that will be impossible for a single legislator to do. That's one reason why I keep advocating for these types of things. Also, I don't believe that the Republicans have a plan, because the Republicans also have supported ballot harvesting for years, even their own internal elections with the proxy votes. I'm on the California Republican Platform Committee this year. I made a submission on federalism, as far as I know, because I wasn't at the drafting committee meeting this last weekend. I don't even know if it was even considered, because the California Republican Party doesn't actually care about republicanism, and that's what we need to do, is we need to focus on republicanism and force California back into compliance.
Yeah, I too am unaware of any plan, but again, with only 19 assemblymen, whatever plan you have, you're going to need great support from the other side, and that's obviously not what's happening. California is giving illegal aliens driver's licenses, as we've seen. You know they're going to be counted in the census. They're giving what I consider to be illegal health insurance. These things to us in the North State is just simple insanity, but it's what's happening in Sacramento and beyond. Now, they're clearly unconstitutional. So how do you get hold a government accountable when they're in blatant violation of the Constitution? And again, that can only happen with great support. And in District 1, there is great support. We have 500,000 people in this district that is unhappy with the direction that California is going. And so I think it's incumbent upon the next assemblyman to engage the district to try to get as many people as possible so that we can be heard. And this is on a lot of issues. It's not just on the sanctuary state, which is a huge travesty, but it's on the gun issues, it's on our timber harvesting, it's on CARB, it's on So many different things that are hurting us.
Okay, Joe, strange that you should have mentioned sedition because that's part of the next question. Title 8, Section 1324 of the U.S. Code makes it illegal to harbor a felon, including illegal aliens, and that's precisely what our Governor and Attorney General have been doing. Would you be willing to assist in bringing charges against the Governor and the Attorney General or any other state official that has committed an act in violation of this code? Would you be willing to introduce impeachment charges against these officials?
Absolutely, without hesitation. I'm not afraid to stand and die on my principles, and that's the reason why I want to go to the assemblies, because I want to fight for our principles. It is sedition, and it's not extreme to say so. It's the law, and we have to be able to fix the republic in California. We have to fix our representation. We all know about the legislative apportionment and our district sizes and Reynolds versus Sim. We all know all about that. California is never going to do it willingly. California is ran by Marxists. They're never going to give up power unless we force them to give up power, and the best way to force them to give up power is for them to lose power via the union.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Constitution is only as good as the people that are backing it up. And we've seen in California just what they're doing to the California Constitution and to the U.S. Constitution. You know, Article 3, it's my favorite article of the California Constitution, where it says that the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. But look how they're not even obeying that. And so they're doing it time and time again. And so it's time that we take a different tact in Sacramento. And I ask this to people all the time. Are you happy with the direction that California is going? Are you happy with the representation that you have today and where we have been going? There's a time to reach across the aisle, and there's a time not to. There's a time to fight. And I think today we need a fighter more than ever, somebody is willing to do things differently. And certainly I would be willing to bring charges up against the governor and the attorney general, absolutely.
Through moral principles, I'd start out by saying yes, absolutely. Senator James did the same exact thing. Do you guys want to take a guess what happened? Nothing. The state of California is so well controlled by one party that they're getting away with doing whatever they want. And when you're breaking federal law, it's the responsibility of the federal government to come in and change that. As a state legislature, there's a barrier that prevents me from getting involved in federal politics, but I will always openly talk about my wish to see the federal government get more involved when states are breaking federal law.
Okay, Patrick, just the luck of the draw for you on this one. George Washington said, "When government takes away citizens' right to bear arms, it becomes citizens' duty to take away government's right to govern." So, what are you going to do in the Assembly to assure that California follows federal court decisions such as Young versus Hawaii and others that guarantee our inalienable right to self-defense? Where do you stand on the current Second Amendment lawsuit that is now pending before the federal Ninth Circuit?
Those are great questions, and I was happy to be a part of the fundraiser to help Mark Byrd appear, sue the state of California versus the Young case out of Hawaii. And so, you know, obviously growing up in a gun shop, the Second Amendment means an awful lot to me, and I plan on being the loudest voice in the entire legislature, not just the Assembly, but the Senate as well. You know, the open carry law, which is your constitutional right, keep in mind that it has been delegated to a second-class right for a long time. But I put it to you this way: wherever your First Amendment right is applicable, so is your Second Amendment right to open carry. And I will be the first legislature to carry a gun into that Capitol if this is allowed. Wherever your First Amendment right is applicable, so is your second. 41 states have already got to this point. California is the last holdout. The Ninth Circuit has already ruled that it is your constitutional right to open carry. Other states are saying you can carry any way you want. I will start it by openly carry. I have no problem with that, and I encourage everybody else to do the same.
I will always support lawsuits that defend our inalienable rights. I will always support lawsuits that will try and improve Second Amendment rights here in California. With California Democrat legislatures in control, they're able to do all these outlandish bills. And a lot of them are partisan politic-based bills. Democrats don't believe in the Second Amendment. They don't believe in the rights that were granted to us by our forefathers. It's absurd. It's absurd that you now have to pay and do a background check to get ammunition, to laws that don't allow you to have more than 10-round magazines. These bills need to be fought. They need to be actively fought. And one of those ways to fighting that is regaining a control back in the California legislature, getting the Republican Party more engaged to the society that we have today. We have a society of a social connectedness that has never been seen before. And the Republican Party is not doing a stand-up job of reaping those rewards. We need to get more involved, more engaged.
The preamble describes that the preamble to the Bill of Rights describes further declaratory restrictive clauses needed to be added to the Constitution for clarity, and so that the citizens would have trust in their government. The Second Amendment is not a permission slip. It doesn't grant you anything. It prohibits the government from infringing on our God-given rights that are inherent. So when things like that come up, it's, well, what are you going to do? Well, you take every single legislative route. You warn people that they're in violation of the Constitution. They're infringing on our rights. You join every single lawsuit, not just Mark's. I would be more than happy to join Mark's. The NRA, SERPA, FPC, Gun Owners of America, all of them are constantly suing. They need help with legislation or resolutions to be submitted that will further establish harm so that legislators can join on as plaintiffs. And quite frankly, if there's a big issue as far as property and everything else and civil disobedience is required, your representative should be showing up armed to lead that fight.
Okay, Lane, this one goes to you, and it still involves gun control. Bryant Daly and James Gallagher both voted with the Democrats in support of AB 2103, which increased the training requirements in order to get a CCW permit. The reason given was that it was done at the request of local sheriffs. How would you have voted on AB 2103 and why?
Well, I start by saying I will always support gun rights. I think, we shouldn't be banning certain kinds of guns. We should be making sure that responsible citizens are getting their hands on those firearms. So I will always, appreciate and support ways to train and better maintain individuals, the right individuals getting the proper firearms that they deserve. And if lead of local agencies, if the sheriffs have come out stating that this is something that will help with public safety, I'll be in support of that.
I would have absolutely voted no, and I would have screamed about it, and I would have found lawsuits to join against it. The Second Amendment is not a permission slip. You do not need permission from the government. You don't need more training from the government. You don't need training or certificates to exercise your free speech or to come here to a church to worship or to freely assemble. You don't need government for that. The government needs to get out of the way. They're infringing on our rights. I'm sick of it. I would be more than happy to take every avenue of approach to undermine and gut everything that they get passed. And quite frankly, I've also been in a firefight. I know what it's like to have rounds coming at me. Most average people, there's not enough training that's going to prepare them for that. It's impossible to prepare for someone for that, even with countless hours of conditioning in the military. You're never going to be fully prepared for that moment, so you just need to be able to change the dynamic of the situation by pulling your own firearm and scaring off the idiot who's trying to rob you.
So this is a classic example of Brian Daly not representing his district. Now, this is not what his district would have wanted, and I don't really believe that it was constitutional as well. So we didn't need to put more burden on CCW holders. We do not have issues with California concealed weapon permit holders. No issue that needed to be addressed. Brian broke ranks with Republicans, and so did Assemblyman Gallagher, and they voted the wrong way. Now, there's a time to reach across the aisle, and there's a time to fight for your district, and this was the time to fight for your district. And the Sheriff's Association were just flat wrong. We don't need more burden on gun owners, and that's all that it was. And what it was it was signaling that the state will do more now in regulation of your CCW. And in fact, some sheriffs now have almost regulated people from getting a permit altogether because of harsh regulations. This was a mistake by Brian. There was no reason that he needed to do it. He did not represent his district well. He did a bad thing here by saying that simply the sheriff supported it. You have to make your own decision on these things.
Okay, Joe, I think we're back to you for the first response. We know that state citizens are penalized for violating gun control laws while illegal aliens are released. They are protected by the courts, the judges, the police. The state of California itself is violating federal law. Why should citizens follow California laws if California won't follow federal laws?
Californians should nullify California laws through acts of civil disobedience and challenging these so-called representatives in Sacramento. They should show up to their meetings, they should show up to their offices, they should challenge them. Not only that, California should be reaching out to the union and asking fellow citizens, hey, I want to run for this seat. Please help support me even though you live in Nevada, because you're being invaded effectively by California refugees who are in turn infringing on your rights and starting to do the entire same mess that they've done to us for decades in other states. We reach out to the union with the courts, we reach out to the union with our federal representatives, we reach out to the union with our fellow citizens, and we have to challenge everything on this on every single front. California is in a state of sedition, and if California is seditious, then it's illegitimate, and so are their laws.
I mean, if folks haven't figured it out by yet, California is in a state of emergency. Again, the Constitution is only as good as those people that back it up. You know, when Mark Baird decided to sue for the open carry, it is what one group and one individual can do against the odds. And I think he has a great chance of winning that. And we have to do more of those things. Now, we leave it up to others, but it's what we have to do. Each of you has the ability to do those things as well, as to take on an issue and sue the government, and we can prevail. I don't advocate anybody breaking the law, but they clearly do. We're better than that. We have to change these laws, and with the help of people in our district, I think we can do it. But it's up to each one of us. We can no longer sit back. It's why I'm running. If I don't run, someone else will take this job. I do not like that scenario. But you can do the same, and many of you have. Some of you have really worked hard for State of Jefferson and other issues, but this is what we have to do now for the rest of our lives.
I support gun rights. I will always defend gun safety. That's something I want to be known right now. I believe that many of these laws and policies that are coming through the state of California are truly absurd. I think we should try and find every avenue towards fighting that, whether it be through legislation or through lawsuits. But as a California legislator, I'll always make you one promise, and that is I will always encourage you not to break the law. So.
Patrick, among the voters in Assembly District 1, there is a lot of frustration with the Republican Party. We see it as not representing us and not fighting for us. They have not fought against the top two practice in elections. Where were they when it came time to challenge and protect the election process? We saw that going to Judicial Watch and the Election Integrity Project California cleaning up the voter rolls. We see California not abiding by people's wishes and going with ballot harvesting, bloated voter rolls. What are you going to do to get the Republican Party to stand up and protect our voting rights against voter fraud?
Well, the first thing you do, you lead by example, and it's not just voter fraud, but it's in all kinds of things. I've been disappointed with a lot of Republicans in Sacramento for a long time. And it was the same problem I saw in the Redding City Council, where someone claimed to be a Republican, but you watch the votes and they were a Republican in name only. I saw it in our own city, and we see it in Sacramento. We see it on some of the votes, just like AB 1203 or 2103. We saw where our representative did not back us up, and so we see these things all the time. So you have to lead by example, and you have to fight. And I think if you're a truly strong leader, you can motivate the Republicans to stay unified and stay the course and stay on the principles that I believe in from the Republican Party, that the party is failing on. I am a Republican, I am a conservative Republican, but I believe in the principles that the Republican Party was founded upon, but they're not acting upon it because it's easier to take the easy way out sometimes. And we've seen that with some of these votes. I've seen it at City Hall, and we see it in Sacramento. I will not do that. I will be different.
Voter harvesting and voter trading is absolutely real. The entire election process needs to be revamped. When I was in Siskiyou County, I was speaking to some individuals that worked with the Siskiyou County election booth, and what they were telling me is that as you go in, as long as you know the individual's name, or perhaps maybe even their address, they can't question you on voting. They have to go through with the process and allow you to vote. That is absurd. If there is some doubt that an individual is not who they say they are, our government, we should be able to investigate those, accusations.
Everything I want to do revolves around standing on my principles and challenging California on every single legal front that we have, every option, the legislative inquiry process, litigation, submitting bills, everything. The Republican Party has been complicit and also culpable in helping the Democrats ruin the Republican California. The California Republicans helped bring about the open primary nonsense. They ignored the ballot harvesting because, as I said before, they've been harvesting ballots within the California GOP during the conventions to control it. So unless we can get a grassroots effort within all of the counties and the central committees to go upend that process and actually get people to show up to those conventions to change that, there's not much you can do specifically for the party itself. It's relatively lost, but it can be done.
Lane, I think you're on the spot here. Okay. We all recognize that voter fraud takes place. We all want it to stop. So will you demand an independent audit of the election of either 2018 or 2020? And what is your plan to stop illegals from voting?
Yes, and problem with that on a state level is ensuring that the state government is actively trying to stop voting, and I'm not sure if our California legislature is. In terms of the state, we need to revamp the Republican Party. I've said this once and I'll continue to say it again. Our ideologies right here in this room are not met throughout the greater state of California. And if we don't start engaging with other Republicans who are there, they're just not getting involved and engaged, then we're going to continue to see problems like this.
I'm sorry, I don't remember what the question was, Janet.
You expect me to remember? I already went through that one. My gosh. I'm old. Yeah, it was concerning voter fraud.
Oh, yes. As far as if it's within the scope to request or demand an audit, absolutely. We should be auditing our elections frequently for accuracy and to make sure that we don't have criminal enterprise influence or foreign influence going on in our elections. It's a no-brainer. We should always be doing that, and we should ensure that there's a proper chain of custody for our votes. We don't have that anymore. There's no proper chain of custody on who the person is. We can't verify who's had the ballot in between that supposed person and now submitting it for it to be counted. It's a banana republic at this point, and we have to try every means possible to try to fix it.
And absolutely, I would be in favor of all those things. Keep in mind that in California, we have voter fraud issues in District 1 in Northern California, but nothing like what they have in Southern California. We have approximately 11, 12 million illegal aliens in the other end of the state, lesser numbers here. So while we see the issue, it's drastic. Part of the illegal driver's licenses, the federal limits apply, is to allow those folks to start voting, and they'll also be counted on the census. So not only is it voter fraud, but it's just fraud in general, and the state's pushing that. And DMV is also helping that process. they are ensuring that in the southern part, that they're going to get another 7 to 8 more congressmen because of these illegal aliens. So it's going to affect the country. So not only is it voter fraud in California, but it's going to affect the entire country over these. You know, California has 2 driver's licenses, a normal driver's license and 1 for illegal aliens. What country, any country out there, would give illegal aliens a driver's license? But it's about fraud, and it's blatant here, absolutely blatant.
Okay, let's take a breather, kick back, relax a little. This is just a little quiz question. It should take you no more than 10 seconds to respond to it. And I just know many of the people behind me are waiting for it to come. When's she gonna ask that one? When's she gonna talk about that one? Okay, 10-second quiz. Yes or no answer, that's all you have to do. When you are elected to the Assembly of the State of California, District 1, will you introduce a bill to help get the state of Jefferson?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Okay, if your answer is no, what is your plan to recover and protect the inalienable rights that the one-party rule in California has systematically stolen from us? And if your answer is yes, why are you so willing to support the state of Jefferson?
I guess I'll go first. I would have.
Is it up to you? Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, we did the yes or no.
Yes.
Let's just call that a little breather, and you can respond first, yes.
Okay. I would absolutely submit a bill. Even though I know it would fail, I'm not afraid to submit it because it can always be submitted again. And it failing the initial time would allow me to join as a plaintiff to join the CFR lawsuit. That's my daughter. But I would absolutely want to join on the CFR lawsuit because it's stalled. We need elected representatives who are not afraid of reprisal or anything else coming back on them to join these lawsuits. So I would submit a bill to get it moving forward. And then of course, once it's moving forward, then you have more ammunition and more leverage to try to get the Democrats to vote in favor of it when the time comes.
So if I could only do one thing in Sacramento, it would be to split us off from the rest of the state of California. To me, that is the single biggest thing that would improve our lives instantly and immediately. We could have strict adherence to the Constitution. We could have the freest state in the Union and one of the most viable economic states in the entire country, if not the entire world. You must give people freedom or they will not stay here. We are seeing vast numbers of people leave California today, and it might be partially because of money, but it's usually because we're stripping you of your freedom. In the state of Jefferson, this will be, we have the best opportunity to have the freest state in the entire country. How valuable is that? They've sent legislatures down to Texas to find out why our California companies are leaving. They're so stupid they have no idea why they're pushing them out of our own state. California is broken beyond repair. I'd love to see the state split just this side of Sacramento.
That sounds like an amazing idea. You know, the idea of finally getting representation back to the North State. Here's what's going to happen when I pass a State of Jefferson bill in the California legislature. The 61 Democrats are going to change that bill and turn it into whatever they want it to be. That could even be, hey, let's never vote on the State of Jefferson again. My candidate saying yes, they would pass a State of Jefferson bill, that is one of the worst ideas that could happen on a state level. I support the State of Jefferson. I want to fight for the state of Jefferson. I will openly support the state of Jefferson. I will not pass legislature that is going to kill the idea of the state of Jefferson. Let's look at it in different aspects. There's some amazing lawsuits that when I've been speaking to different Patriot members, there's been some amazing lawsuits that are coming through to the idea to push for the state of Jefferson. But no, I think it's naive to say that with the legislature we have right now, the state of Jefferson, passing a bill in the state legislature for the state of Jefferson is going to work. It simply won't.
Okay, let's go back and talk about that economy that Patrick was describing. We know that businesses are leaving California. We know that those businesses are not poverty cases. They're taking their money and their entrepreneurship with them. We also know that it costs several $100s to rent a moving van to go to Phoenix, Arizona, and it costs about $1.75 to bring that moving van back to California. So what is your plan to prevent this money and brain drain from our state?
Well, they're leaving because of lack of freedom. Every time you go to DMV, higher prices, taxes going up. They simply can live cheaper and freer within 1 day's drive. So that's not hard for people. I have half of my customers over the last few years leave California, and that's going to continue to happen, but I think differently. And I encourage people to think differently here. The reason why you should not leave is because when there's a disease, you just don't leave. You have to fight it where it's at. We owe it to the next generation to fight for these fundamental rights, these constitutional rights. We owe it to them, because if we simply leave, which is the easy thing to do, you will get a lot of freedom when you leave. Within 1 to 2 days drive, you can find many states that are very favorable. But then there are less good people here fighting this fight. We have to fight them, we have no choice. And whether the battle can be won or not, we have to try. That's why I believe I'm in this race, because we have to try. We have no more time. We have to fight this tyranny today and use everything that we've got.
California loses 6 million people each year. They gain 5 million people. Those 6 million people tend to be people that have worked in manufacturing, that have created small business. They gain 5 million for people that are moving into the state that is leading the nation in technology. Why can't we have both? Why is California passing these tax bills, these ridiculous tax bills, that are putting a burden on small business? There's a recent bill coming up, Prop 13. They want to split Prop 13 so they can start looking at property rates for business owners only. They want to start being able to annually adjust business values. That's going to destroy small business in California if it goes through the state legislature. We're going to lose so much small business to surrounding areas like Oregon, Nevada. We need to get the Republican Party to 30 legislatures. That will get us out of the super minority so we can start fighting these ridiculous tax bills.
I honestly don't want people and businesses to stop fleeing California. What I want is I want them to flee into Jefferson. So we need to stay and we need to fight because everybody is leaving. That's fundamental, that's key. How do you prevent it? In the meantime, how do you really prevent it? It's very difficult. The counties have to take on that burden. There has to be coalitions of businesses and county governments and municipalities suing California over the increase of regulatory costs and making it too expensive to do business here. We have to separate and we have to be able to have our own government and get away from California. But in the meantime, we have to try to fix California as a republic, because if we can fix California as a republic, it's going to ripple throughout the union, and it's going to help the union for the better.
Lane, let's talk about California's environment. Right now, we are on a path of green and sustainability to shift our power sources from hydroelectric over to windmills, which they're talking about putting even more on Hatchet Ridge to the east of us, and solar. Give us your analysis on how this impacts the state of California and its economy.
It's going to destroy any metropolitan city within the state of California. Even here in Redding, I believe the percentage you have to get to by 2020 was about 50%. If we were to put a solar panel on every single home within Redding, we still wouldn't be able to meet those requirements. California legislatures are passing these ridiculous green environment bills at the expense of the constituent. We are being, we need to look at this more realistically. We need to start trying to pass legislation that, let's start lowering these numbers. Let's start analyzing how this is going to harm rural California.
There's nothing environmentally friendly about these so-called green energy plants. Hydroelectric power is cleaner, is much cleaner. Biomass plants are much cleaner. The mine waste and abuses that happen overseas to get the lithium for batteries is absurd. It's not practical. It's not pragmatic. We don't have enough sun the entire time the sun goes down. We also don't have enough wind all the time. Water flows continuously, and if we trap more water, we can get more hydroelectric power. That's a very simple thing. If we manage our forests, we get more biomass for our biomass burning plants. That's simple. Those are actual renewable energies, and we have to fight these unnecessary increases, and we have to be pragmatic about our approaches in fighting California, but we also have to fix California because the Republic is broken.
Almost everything that these extreme environmentalists have done over the last decades has been complete backwards to our way of life in District 1. In Siskiyou County, the Klamath Dam Removal Project, as you've heard about, they're going to remove or attempt to remove 4 good hydroelectric power dams in an event to rewild the area. In Shasta County, we have the catastrophe with our woods. We also see the Hatchet Ridge problem. I've had a couple meetings with those folks to see the tragedy that's about to take effect there. This is a 38,000-acre project where you're going to start seeing wind turbines that are not green go all across the valley, and this is another big chunk to it. So these folks, they're not really talking about green, because the hydroelectric is truly green. They're talking about a different agenda that they're not being honest about, and they've done it elsewhere already, and they're trying it right here in our district, in District 1. They're trying it right now in Siskiyou County. They're trying it right now in Shasta County. So we have to fight them wherever we go, because if they're successful here, we will see them successful elsewhere, which they have already done. And they're entrenched, and their thinking is completely backwards.
Joe, do you currently support with your time and your donations the Howard Jarvis Tax Association, which is fighting very hard to protect our rights under Proposition 13 and to sue for a refund of our money for the fire fee?
I absolutely support the Howard Jarvis Association. I have not been donating to them specifically because I am a disabled veteran and I'm on a fixed income. And my current donations have been going to fund the CFR lawsuit.
Yeah, I support their efforts. I haven't given them any money, but they really haven't asked me to give any money, but I've certainly given money to a lot of other good causes, and that is a good cause. And you know, we're overtaxed in every category. If you take a look at your gas tax and see how much you're being taxed compared to the other states, if you look at your DMV fees and your trucking fees, this CARB is all about raising your costs. So all your food products are essentially artificially higher. So every aspect of your life, you're being overtaxed. I fought at City Hall to reduce taxes, and I stopped 4 sales taxes from happening, 3 sales tax attempts from happening with help from my colleagues, because they can't manage their own budget, so their way to fix the budget is to tax you more. And so I have a record of stopping tax increases on the local area, and that's exactly what I'll do in Sacramento, fight the best way that I can. And this is where we can reach across the aisle, because the reality is nobody likes taxes. But they're doing it. These special interest groups are certainly doing it. And I'll fight to protect. I think you're overtaxed today. I think you should have reduced taxes.
Yes, absolutely. No, I haven't been asked to donate, though. Same boat as Patrick. There is 365 bills that went through legislation this year. 365 tax bills. Half of those were tax increases. I don't think California legislatures across the aisle really care about taxing Californians. And that's a huge problem. And that's a problem that can be easily resolved. You want to know how it can be easily resolved? By getting 30 legislators back into California so we can start fighting these tax bills again. We're in a super minority right now. In a super minority, no matter how much experience you have, you're not going to be able to do anything to fight these tax bills. California legislators have proven that to us by implementing 365 tax bills. Let's get Republican legislatures back into office. Let's get out of this super minority, and let's start getting some work done.
Here's an issue that really has not gotten much publicity, but it concerns the rights of people in this state, and they are being trumped on. California Senate Bill 276 discusses medical exemptions from mandatory vaccinations for children. And where children go, adults can follow. Where do you stand on this legislation? I think we're going to Patrick.
Well, it is becoming an issue, and it certainly is an issue in District 1, and I know in Nevada County it's a pretty strong issue there. I truly believe that this is another failure of the government forcing parents to vaccinate their children. I believe that's an issue that should be left up to the parents. We know there are some health effects by vaccinating everyone, and when we see government getting into every aspect of your life, including vaccinations, I think it's just an overreach of government. So it is an issue in this district, and it has been a big topic in Nevada County, which is the second largest area within this district. And I would support the parents' right to choose if they want their child vaccinated or not.
Well, the hugest problem with, public school systems is when you don't get one child vaccinated, there's a problem where all of the children can get diseased, can get infected, can get sick. But that's what the public school system. I personally feel that in a public school environment, yes, your child should get the proper vaccinations to be around other students and not get those other students sick. But here in Assembly District 1, we have a lot of great homeschooling opportunities where children don't associate with other students in a public school system format. And those students should have the parents should have the right to decide whether or not they want to vaccinate their child. However, if it is in a public setting, yes, I personally believe it should be mandatory to vaccinate your children. Let's not get measles outbreak for our students when they're 10 years old.
I take a different perspective on this. If this will be the undoing of the public education system, then I'm for it, because it's a violation of the 14th Amendment. And anybody who knows the Constitution, who's properly educated on it, knows that it's unconstitutional, and it's illegal for the states to pass laws that will violate anybody here of life, liberty, or property without due process. That is a violation of people's personal property, your body, your life. It's a violation of parental rights. I'm vehemently against it. I think it's fun to play with the idea of, the government schools shutting down and people being privately and properly educated, but I support education no matter where it comes from, as long as it's good education. And if you look at everything that California's doing, everything they want to do is they want to drive us from our homes, from our rural areas, into cities to control us like chattel. They want to vaccinate us like chattel, and they also want to restrict our water and our food and our housing access like chattel.
Okay, Lane, Joe just brought up a good point. They're trying to drive us out of the rural areas and into the cities. And I'm sorry, I can't see you, but I'm still talking to you. Tell us your analysis and your feeling about the impact that United Nations Agenda 21-2030 is having on California and what its future impact will be.
I haven't done enough research on Agenda 21 to make an accurate explanation to you on that one, but I can talk about rural California and how I think it's being pressured into going into more urban or city environments. We do not have the infrastructure capable to allow large-scale businesses to come to the northern part of this district and do business, and that's a big problem. I love the idea that we are a rural community. But at the same time, I also love the idea of a business owner being able to come enjoy the mountains, the scenery, the lakes that we have. And to do that, you need to be able to have the infrastructure capable of that. There was a Senate bill that was going to go through the legislature that would allow for fiber optics. And for those of you who don't know, fiber optics is the ability to get high-speed internet within the North State. It didn't end up going through, but I would love the idea to get the infrastructure, the development needed for rural California.
Everything that they do, it revolves around control. They try to control everything we do. They want to control our water. They want to control our arms. Well, they want to take them all and then illegally smuggle them in and then sell them to drug cartels. They want to control everything we have. This is not a conspiracy. Agenda 21, now 2030, because it had to update for a year, because that's the 2030 is a year mark for it. It's not a conspiracy. It's what they've been doing systematically to chase us out of our homes. They want us to consolidate in the cities. They want to be able to track everything we do. They want to be able to track everything we say. They want to be able to track everywhere we go, but they want to keep us within the confines of the cattle chutes. And a lot of rural areas, people know what cattle chutes are, and we don't want to be in.
So Agenda 21 is real, and I saw firsthand the effects of this at the Reading City Council. And one good example is what they call complete streets, where they want to take the streets from their traditional 2 or 3 lanes, bring them down to a much smaller area, and then allow every other type of use, biking and anything else, to go along with it. But it's just a small example of it happening in your own town here. Low-income housing put in untraditional places is another issue, but they're clearly working on and in all aspects of government. And I can tell you the League of California Cities and the League of California Counties in Sacramento, they work on this method every day. There's not a day that goes by in Sacramento that they don't believe in the techniques and the practices of UN Agenda 21, getting people out of the rural areas and into the cities. And the Klamath Dam Removal Project is a small part of that. Not managing your forests is a small part of that. Closing roads is a small part of that in the rural areas. And we see this time and time again, where there's no real book that you can look at to see that they're doing it, but they are definitely doing it.
Joe, it's almost unfair to ask you this one, but it does apply to Lassen County also. And in Shasta County, we're having a serious issue with providing money for more jail bed spaces. And this is due to California law. We're talking about a 1 cent or a half a cent sales tax to pay for those jail bed spaces because of California law. What can the legislature do to prevent this foisting upon the counties of a service that they cannot pay for?
If it's within the scope of the state should be paying for it and finding a way to do it, and not be pushing mandates down onto the counties like they've done with the pensions to create a fake surplus and everything else. I was the only person writing in opposition to a recent sales tax increase measure up in Lassen County. I was the only one arguing with the Board of Supervisors about it, really arguing with them about it, and it was defeated, and they were embarrassed because it was a dishonest process. They weren't honest about how they wanted to get the money and what they were going to do with the money. And we have to be able to expose them for their dishonesty. And when there is a need, of course, we need to grow things like our freeways, our highways, our schools, our reservoirs, everything. It needs to expand with the need. But we also need to get rid of a lot of these frivolous laws that have people going into jail or prison when there's no victim involved.
Janet, can you read that question again? I just want a little more clarity on it.
Yeah, I want to know where you stand and what you think the solution is for the problem with providing jail bed spaces.
Sure.
Shasta County, obviously, and I'm sure it's a problem with the others because of the state law that requires it.
Right, so the county right now is contemplating a sales tax increase, and I think that's a mistake, and it's the wrong way. And I would partially disagree that the county can provide, when we book and release a prisoner, and a person 32 times, they're failing to incarcerate. They have a $380 million budget, give or take. They have to rearrange their budget without raising taxes. They can do that. City of Reading has the same problem. We don't have a money problem. We have a problem with how we're spending your money, and it is your money. We don't need to raise the sales tax to do it, but we do need to incarcerate. This is a county issue, and they can do it, but the public has not forced them to do it. We do need to incarcerate every person that has been arrested for a crime, and they'll have their day in court and then possibly do jail time, but that's not what's happening right now. The wrong way to approach it is to add a sales tax, whether it's at the state level. I would certainly fight, and I fought several times, many times at the local level to stop these sales taxes. You have to manage your budget, and they're not managing their budget. They're not managing their retirement benefits. There's a tsunami coming on that, and it's affecting everything they do.
I I actually disagree with Mr. Jones. I don't think it's a local problem. I don't think it's a county problem. It is a state problem. There was a bill, many of you might know, called AB 109. It was a prison realignment bill. That prison realignment bill brought prisoners from down south up north. It created a huge crime problem in Reading. There was, with a lot of these bills that are coming through, it's increased the growth of crime here in Reading. We have crime rates that are sometimes double, even triple that of the national average. Statistically speaking, you're more likely to experience crime right here in Reading than Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles. That is completely unacceptable. We need to increase funding on a state level to start recognizing and identifying areas of crime within the state that are abnormal to state and national averages, and increase funding to those areas. We need to increase our jail space. We need to increase funding for our police officers, and one way we can do that right now is an increase. There's money that's given on AB 109 that gives individuals funding for this community. Let's increase that mandatory spending.
Patrick, we have another problem that goes along with the jail space. I live in Burning, and it has even infiltrated into the small mountain towns, and that is the homeless, drug-using, crime-committing population that is not from the area in which they are currently camping out. It is a problem in that they are causing forest fires that endanger the communities. That even happens in Reading, even though there aren't forests, it's still grass and brush fires. What can we do through the legislature to solve this problem?
Well, to be honest, again, with 19, they're taking, California legislature, both in the Senate and Assembly, are taking a soft approach on crime. AB 109 was releasing low-level offenders, at least for their last crime, and they're putting them back into the counties and cities from which they committed those crimes. And it did increase the crime here locally and the costs associated with that. That's just a way for the state to reduce their costs and pass it on to the local cities and counties. I would fight to prevent that from happening, but obviously with 19 assemblymen, it's going to be difficult. But it does not alleviate the responsibility of your local areas, cities and counties, of taking a tougher approach on crime. And you have to incarcerate them. And that is a number one priority in the local area, is to serve the public with public safety. And because their budgets are so out of whack, they cannot do their jobs today that you are owed. And so we're talking in the city of Reading about 1,500 people that are causing a great deal of harm. And it can be dealt with if they're not, obviously they're not going to deal with it on the state level, so we have to do it on the local level.
It can be done on a state level, in my opinion. One thing I think we need to do is re-implement state mental health programs for individuals that suffer mental illness or substance abuse. I don't think that's the end-all, be-all towards resolving homelessness throughout our state, but that's one step in the right direction, getting them the proper health care they need so they can get rehabilitated and brought back into society as proud and productive members of it. Our new governor would like to put money towards simply just giving housing towards homelessness. I don't think that's the solution. You need to fix the core root of the problem before you can start offering more opportunities. And we don't have any state mental health programs to help these individuals get the care that they need. And in my opinion, a big problem towards committing these crimes are different mental health reasons or substance abuse reasons.
It breaks my heart to hear people who are homeless being portrayed as simply being criminal because they're homeless. There is a lot of homeless veterans. My brothers and sisters, a lot of them are homeless because they're struggling with their post-traumatic stress and they're dealing with things that they saw in theater. And yes, sometimes they come back and they have substance abuse problems and they get involved in other petty crime and everything else. It's primarily a mental health issue. We have to take care of that. Some people cannot physically take care of themselves. There needs to be due process to bring them in to take care of them, and hopefully they can eventually get well enough to go out on their own again and take care of themselves and be productive members of society. But we shouldn't criminalize people for being homeless and mentally ill. We should take care of them. We should find ways to do that, but we absolutely should not just treat them like they're run-of-the-muck criminals.
Lane, in the last week I received from PG&E a whole stack of papers on how I could file for a loss claim due to the fires, which luckily did not affect me. But is there legislative action that could take place that would prevent PG&E from sticking me with the claim bill rather than the stockholders invested in PG&E?
I haven't done any research on bills like that right now, but I'll tell you what, when I'm in the legislature, I'll always make sure that it's the constituents that are getting the representation they deserve, not big companies. And I think that's what's happened with PG&E. California has sided too much with PG&E and not enough with the constituents who suffered from these fires. Many in the Carr and Camp fires, and there has been legislation that has bailed out PG&E multiple times. I think that's ridiculous. We need to look at aiding constituents. We should help business, but not at the expense of harming taxpayers that are suffering from these fires.
The best thing we could do for PG&E is allow them to go bankrupt and restructure their business model. I think that's the best thing that we can do for them. As far as everything else, government interference creates monopolies. That's why we have PG&E. That's why they jack up the rates. They buy off politicians. They do whatever they want with that, and it's a monopoly. We have to break monopolies. Now, if you want a proper actual legislative solution to it, it would be to break monopolies up legislatively by mandating that communities be on more microgrid type power grids. That way they can have their own biomass plants, you can have your own hydroelectric dams locally, so that way when the grid goes down somewhere else, it's not affecting you hundreds of miles away. It's also a strategic issue, because if people want to, well, foreign adversaries want to hack into our power grid, the United States will go dark except for Texas.
So the California legislature has already passed a bill that allows, in future incidences, for PG&E to pass that cost on to the ratepayers. So there's already a bill that does that. I would not have supported that bill, and I would have fought against that. It was found that PG&E was responsible for this fire, and they need to pay for the damage that was created. In addition to that, if we had a managed force, this problem would have not started in the first place, or the severity wouldn't have been as bad. And so really we have just a failure on so many different levels here, but managing our force is a big issue, and we all knew about Paradise for a long time as a huge potential threat, and it just takes one spark late in the fire season for this to begin. It does not alleviate the problems or the responsibilities with PG&E, and it doesn't allow the legislature to pass those costs on to the public, which they've done in future cases. But managing your force would have solved all this and saved 85 lives. And you know, we missed a huge thing in Redding because of the fires. That fire tornado, if it had stayed on its line, the whole city of Redding could have been burned down.
Joe, every time the legislature sits in session in Sacramento, we are all at risk, because every time they pass a law, our rights are eroded. So have you been in the Assembly over the last year? Give me 2 bills that you would have voted against, and why.
I can't think of the assembly number, but I absolutely would have voted against the transgender identity indoctrination going into our elementary schools. I think it is child abuse, and it's a violation of human rights. I would absolutely have voted against that. That is a travesty. I also would have voted against the increasing of the one you mentioned earlier, as far as increasing standards for concealed carry, since we don't need permission from the government to exercise our rights.
Yeah, so there's a huge list. Assembly Bill 1203, I certainly wouldn't have supported that. The bill that allowed for rural funding to hospitals, while at first glance that was a good bill, and our Assemblyman Brian Daly did support that, but it also gave illegals 50,000 illegals medical care on your tax dollars. I would not have supported that. Certainly giving the illegals driver's licenses, I would not have supported that. There's just a whole bunch of things that I would have fought against. They would have probably passed them anyways, but at least we can represent our district and stand tall and represent the people that we serve.
Well, Well, I would have started by fighting those 365 tax bills that just went through. But however, there's two bills that I was passionate about. I don't have the bill names on me right now, but one took place in May. It was for independent contractors. It made it more difficult for small business owners to define independent contractors, making it so that they now have to pay more benefits for employees, which in some cases, that's not what is required. They regulated the definition of an employee and restricted the rights of independent contractors to do business, which in my opinion, affected independent contractors and small business owners. Another one I would have fought for, of course, is the ammunition background check here in California. It's ridiculous now that I have to go pay $1 tax straight to the state and get a background check anytime I want to go out and target practice.
Patrick, if I'm counting correctly, it's you. Brian Daly, as our assemblyman, made a big emphasis on the fact that his technique of working in his job was to reach across the aisle and to invite people from the urban areas up to the rural areas in an effort to have them sympathize with him and to be able to work with them on the assembly. Would you please assess for us how successful you thought that practice was?
Well, clearly you do have to reach across the aisle. That's a must. With only 19 assemblymen, you're not going to get anywhere unless you get some bipartisan support. So reaching across the aisle is important. But there is a time to do it and there's a time not to do it. Brian has done things successfully, and I think he's also done things incorrectly. Several bills were unconstitutional and wrong that he supported. And I guess my frustration with that is there was no reason it was going to pass whether he supported it or not. So he didn't stand with his district, what folks in his district would have wanted him to do, and he reached across the aisle too many times. Now, when somebody says that, we really don't know what that means. We're not down there all the time. We have no idea what really reaching across the aisle means to them. We know what it means to us. There are lots of issues that I believe we can get somewhere with when they understand the severity of our problems. And we'll fight for those things. But there's a time on certain issues, gun rights, abortion, we're going to stand very firm and we're not going to give in.
There are times that you work across the aisle, and there are times that you don't. And if you are accurately representing your district, then you will know what the constituents want you to work across the aisle for, and what they do not want you to work across the aisle for. Assemblyman Daly, now Senator Daly, did a great job of showing Southern legislators that we are vastly different up here in the North. It was, in my opinion, that he really did do his best efforts and saved the biomass industry. It could have completely died if it wasn't for Assemblyman Daly reaching out to legislators down south. However, there has been instances where we've seen what has happened when you do reach across the aisle, when partisan politics are involved. And I'm disappointed to sometimes see Assemblyman Daly not accurately represent his constituents.
There are times when you can reach across the aisle. They're called mutual goals. When you have mutual goals, you can build relationships and you can work with Democratic counterparts. Fortunately, Assemblyman Daly, he's done some good things, but he's also done a lot of nothing. And one thing that he really did do, though, was he, as the Assembly Minority Leader, oversaw one of the greatest legislative humiliations we've had in the state of California's history. So, clearly, reaching across the aisle isn't always effective. We have to be able to talk to each other, listen, understand, know what our shared interests are, maybe explain some things, but when it comes to our rights, we don't compromise them. There is no compromise on our rights. It doesn't matter if we show them anything, they're not gonna care. When someone doesn't care about your rights and they want to dehumanize you because of your rights, there's no compromise on those subjects at all.
Lane, what is the pay for the position for which you are running, and how many hours a day do you plan to spend on this job?
To my understanding, it's somewhere around $100,000. I will be putting all of my time and effort. I will be going above the required hour limits to work as a legislator. My goal, the reason why I got into politics in the first place, was because I saw a disconnect between the constituents of this community and those who were elected to represent them. And I want a legislator in office who's going to put all of his time and effort into making sure that you get the representation you deserve. This is what I want to fight for. This is what I want to do. I want to try and make not only this district a better place, but I want to strengthen the Republican Party. And that is going to take hours and hours of work.
When you swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same, it's a 24/7 job. It doesn't matter if it's a lowly government employee or if you're in uniform overseas. It doesn't matter. It's a 24/7 job. You do what you have to do with the requirements, and until you're successful with your mission, you don't stop. I believe the pay is around $110,000 or so, but I don't need it. I'm medically retired from the military. I've talked to my wife about this, but I would even consider foregoing that salary because it's a drain on the taxpayers and investing that back into communities that are in need, and also growing the Republican Party to try to fix our republic.
So I do think it's about $110,000, and then there's some other stipends or other things, so it is fairly high. We buy a lot of guns with $110,000. One of the things I did when I served on the Reading City Council is they give you health care for life. That was a $28,000 package. If you served 5 years, you get health care, dental, vision, CalPERS, and I turned all that down. I didn't want to take that. I never took that. I was one of the very few council members that didn't turn it down, or that did not take it and did turn it down. And I did that because I didn't feel that I earned it, and they tried to get me to do it because they want you part of the team. But my team was 90,000 people. That's who I worked for. That's who I served. And so that's very similar to what they're trying to do here at Sacramento. They're trying to give you a lot of things to get you part of a team, and that concerns me greatly. And so when I get there, I'll make that decision, and hopefully I can turn down the PERS and bars and all those things, just like I've done in the past. And you know, we serve a large district, 500,000 people. It's a full-time job, and we have to give it everything we got. It's a fight of our lives. I can only do this for a few years because it's a very taxing job.
Joe, since you will be representing approximately, give or take a couple, 500,000 constituents, how do you expect to be in contact with them on a personal, representational level?
Well, unfortunately, it's impossible to be in contact with that many people. Even if you're working 24/7, it's impossible. But the best thing that you do is you go visit your district, you go visit large groups of people at a time, you answer the phone, you return phone calls, you actually write back personal letters to as many constituents as you can, especially when they're writing you about the state of Jefferson instead of sending back some stupid form letter that I know most of us all here got. So you have to invest a lot of time in traveling because it's large. You have to pick up the phone, you have to call people, you have to return the favor, you have to show up, you have to hold the meetings, barbecues, functions, as much as possible. But the best thing to do is to help fix the republic and keep these districts within the borders of the counties. That way, those state senators and assemblymen can actually have a better physical ability to see their constituents.
One of the most successful people up here for reaching out into the district, obviously we're going to spend a lot of time in Sacramento, but you have to get out to your district, and that was our current Congressman, Doug Amalfa. He gets out an awful lot, and so he has a good ear to the ground. It seems like when I was on council, all the kind of events that we were doing, he was at most of those. And he was recently up, in Alturas and the tall ends of Shasta County. And so getting out in your district is super important. I plan on getting out, seeing every county every month. I also plan on hiring one staff member just to inform the public of what's happening in Sacramento, every bill and every vote, so that you're aware of what's happening. Because right now, most of us do not know what's happening with our Assembly and our Senate. And so I want to fix that problem by letting you know what's happening. And then to hear from my constituents, we need to get into every county. And I really enjoy traveling. I like going to Modoc County. I like going to Nevada County, Placer County, and Siskiyou County. They have issues there. They need to see that you're concerned. And, you know, that's what a representative is. That's part of the job.
It's most certainly not impossible to make sure that this district gets the best representation that it deserves, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. It's a matter of balancing your time accurately between the different counties in this district to make sure that their voices are heard. One thing that I'll be doing is making the Reading area my capital area for my district office. I will have multiple staff traveling throughout the community and ensuring that local city officials, county supervisors, organizations, the need of individuals are met. I will also be traveling throughout the district. When I'm not in Sacramento fighting for issues that I want to try and get through the legislation, I'll be out here meeting with you, talking with you, going to organizations, meeting with local officials, sharing my view, sharing what's going on in Sacramento myself. I will be active and present right here in this community. And I used to be a staffer for 5 years. I ran the Reading district office. I know exactly what it takes for a staffer to make sure that you get the representation you deserve, and that's what I'm going to do.
Patrick, we are often told that if we don't know what our rights are, then we have a difficult time claiming them. And as our representative, you are going to take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of California, so you can defend those rights for us. So the question is, doing a self-assessment, have you actually read the United States Constitution? Have you read the Constitution of California? If I gave you a quiz right now on those two documents, how well would you do?
I would do okay, and I knew you were going to ask that question because you always do. So yeah, I have been reading the Constitution of California and the U.S. Constitution, and I had for a lot of years, particularly certain aspects of the Constitution, the California Constitution, with regards to city. The Article 14 has to do with, and there's 15 sections of Article 14 has to do with cities and counties and how they govern, and that was very important to me at the city of Reading, and the use of eminent domain. And you know, I saw what happened at the city of Reading where they violated some of these rights, and I fought against those, and I know they're doing the same thing in Sacramento as well. So, you know, unfortunately, the California Constitution's had 500 different changes over time, so there's a lot to it. But I read it as often as I can. I'm not an expert in it, but I've got a pretty good idea of the articles, and I want to continue to research those articles and to get better knowledge on, like Article 14, where we spent a lot of time on that one article because it's so pertinent to the city of Reading.
Democracy fails when society disengages, and in my opinion, one of the most important things is to increase education, to spread throughout society the idea of understanding the constitutions on both the state and federal level. Going through the school systems, yes, of course, we've all read the Constitution. I'm not an expert in it. I'm not going to be able to recite it to you. I'm not a constitutionalist. It's something I should be reading more on my off time. When you get into the state of California, you read the California Constitution. It's something that I've read. It's not something I'm going to be able to rehearse to you if you quizzed me right now.
I've read the United States Constitution many, many times. I frequently reference it for various reasons of constant research. I've tried reading the California Constitution. I've read much of it, but I have read more of the Jefferson Constitution, which I'm much more familiar with than the California Constitution, since the California Constitution is the second largest constitution in the world. The only one larger is India, and it's a bureaucratic hell. So that's what California is following. And unfortunately, the ever-changing constitutional amendments to it make it nearly impossible to keep up on as far as being able to properly adhere to an oath to that Constitution. The United States Constitution, absolutely. We should easily be able to understand that and understand our rights and our basic rights, which are not all enumerated. So the anti-federalists were right to a degree because they were afraid that enlisting them was going to have them restricted, and then unfortunately that has happened.
Okay, gentlemen, this is good news for you. It's the last question. What is the reason that you are running for this office? And we are all sitting here wondering why anyone would put himself through this. what unique qualifications that you possess would impel me to vote for you rather than any of your opponents? I think we're going to Lane. Are you the next one?
I got into politics when I was 18 years old. And when I looked around the room, I saw 50 to 60-year-olds. And there's no problem with that whatsoever. You have created such an amazing legacy for the Republican Party. The problem is, now our generations that have come after you are not getting engaged. And that breaks my heart to see. We need to reignite the Republican Party. We need to get out of the super minority. And to do that, we have to be able to connect with the future generations so we can leave a legacy for your children and for your grandchildren. I got into politics because I got to travel the district for 5 years. In 5 years, I heard these same exact issues: public safety, disaster relief, a need for improved development. And yet, 5 years down the road, it still hasn't been resolved.
I broke my body in Afghanistan for what I believe. And unfortunately, that war has primarily kept the war away from us. It hasn't done anything to defend our rights. It hasn't really protected the homeland. It has not allowed me to really protect and defend the Constitution by going there. I'm proud of what I did. I would do it again if I could. But the most important thing is I want to protect and defend the Republic. I want to protect and defend our home. And I honestly believe that I can do more in a suit down in Sacramento than I ever could with a rifle in Afghanistan. I want to be able to tuck my daughter in knowing that she's not going to be indoctrinated in school. I want to be able to know that I can open a business without everything being regulated away from us. I want to know that my family and friends aren't just going to pack up and move because they're tired of the nonsense coming out of Sacramento. I want to protect and defend our home. That's why.
So I have over 40 years in the private sector. No one in this race has anywhere near that. That's important. That's good experience that I take to Sacramento, and they're in desperate need of that. 8 years on an elected body, the Reading City Council, through a global recession, dealing with 10 different labor unions and bargaining groups. That's very important because we do the same thing in Sacramento. This is just the experience that I have that is greater than any other candidate in this race. And this experience is going to be super important because we have an extremely tough job in the Assembly. We are in a super minority position. We have to use every bit of experience that we've got. And I am the most experienced in this race. Now, that means nothing if my views don't align with what the views are of District 1. And as I've gotten out in this district, I've gotten a great reception. I believe some of the values that I have are the same values that I see in District 1. And we're getting a great response. I've enjoyed traveling, and experience does matter. This is a tough job. We've got a battle of our lives ahead of us.
Joe, the next 3 minutes are yours.
It's okay if I stand? Is that all right?
You may indeed.
Okay. I'd like to thank, Sally, Terry, Janet, everybody for putting this on, and everybody for coming out to support all of these candidates. And I'd also like to thank the candidates for coming out. It's great. And I just want to reiterate the reason why I took this task on is because I'm willing to fight, because I've been overseas in a gunfight. I know what type of a risk we have here. This is not just a little regular political season so that we can vote and get through and get by until the next candidate comes through. Our republic is being dismantled and dissected by Marxists in Sacramento. We have to stand up and we have to fight that. We have to fight for every single right that we have, enumerated or unenumerated. We have to be able to take that fight across multiple flanks throughout California and throughout the union. We have to reach out to the union to have the union help put pressure on fixing California. California's never going to fix itself. They're never going to let us have Jefferson unless we make them. And that's one reason why I would appreciate your support. And and I'd hope that you would know that I would absolutely treat this not just as any other battle. This is a fight for our lives, because it is. Because if we lose our republic, a lot of horrible things can happen. We've seen what happens in Venezuela. We've seen what happens around the world whenever a proletariat revolution overthrows a government, either by violence or through democracy. We have to protect our families. We have to protect our communities. Thank you very much.
I too would like to thank everybody for coming tonight, and thank Sally and Terry and Janet. Thank you all for putting this on. This is the best debate we've had so far, the best attended, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight. When I first ran for city council back in 2002, I ran because I was watching votes in my own city that I was unhappy with. The things that they were doing was not reflective of our town, and I was upset with that. And I'm a type of guy that I don't like to complain about something. I like to try to go fix it. So what do? You jump in a city council race and see what you can do. So I did that in 2002. I came in dead last. Kind of hard on your ego. But, you know, to be honest, I was a rookie. I didn't know a lot. I didn't have the experience I needed to learn. So I sat through 2 more years of council meetings. I made 12 years of council meetings, continuous without missing one. No one did that, but I did it to learn. I ran again in 2004, came in dead last again, and then I ran again in 2006 and won that seat, and then the work began. And I had victories and I had failures, but I always tried hard and I always tried to represent 90,000 people in our city. And that's exactly what happened as we fast forward to today. I felt the same urge again, that I wasn't happy with the representation that we are getting, and I'm learning more and more about people being unhappy with our representation in District 1 as I've gotten out to all the counties. And it's what we need today, and it's what prompted me to run. I wasn't happy with what I've been seeing. I'm certainly not happy with the direction that California is going. We need representation. We need a leader. We need a person ready to fight. We need a person that has that experience. And while I may be the oldest in this race at 51, and trust me, 50s is not that old, but I'm usually the young guy. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, when I first got elected to city council, I was the second youngest person ever elected, and I was inexperienced, and it took me years to get ready. So I lost a few years there because I didn't have the experience. Today I do. Today I have that experience, particularly in the private sector, over 40 years of dealing with California Department of Justice and others. And I tell you, that years of work will not be wasted in Sacramento. There are going to be times where we have victories. We can compromise on certain things to get things that we need for District 1. We can reach across the aisle, but there are other times that we have to fight. And that's the thing that I think I will bring to this more than any of the other candidates, is the willingness to engage and call treasonous acts for what they are when they violate the Constitution of California or the California of the United States. We need to call it for what it is. We need to not go down there and have dinners and hobnob, but we need to fight and protect our rights. And I've seen it too much in Sacramento for all the years that we would go down there. I would see everybody getting along to try to get along. Has it helped District 1? Are you better today than what you were, say, 5 or 10 years ago? You are not. If we don't do something now, today, it is going to make it that much harder. To me, this is a fight of our lives. I'm not leaving California. I am prepared to fight, and I'm prepared to fight for you. I'm a young enough guy, but I've got the experience. I appreciate your vote August 27th. Thank you.
They say when a cog is, working, don't try and fix it. Ask yourselves, is this the best we are doing right now? I don't think so. I am running on 2 major things. I want to rebuild the Republican Party here in California, and I want to issue bills within my first year in office addressing my platform issues. We have 19 Republican legislators, 61 Democrat legislatures. We need to find new ways to connect with individuals and get them re-enthused and re-engaged into the Republican Party. Did you know that on Facebook, you can reach out to 28,000 people with a simple ad? I think that's a huge thing, to be able to reach out on a way of social connectedness that can get people engaged back into the Republican Party. We need to find ideas and strategies like that. How are we going to get our message out? How are we going to get new people involved in the political process? Democrats are beating us on that. They have younger individuals involved and engaged in Democrat politics. That's the problem that we have, that we need to resolve, to work towards getting individuals back into the political process. I'm running on a platform of public safety, disaster relief, and development. I want to work towards creating state mental health programs so we can address homelessness in our communities. I want to reduce tree density levels. I want to reduce ground fuels. I want to implement fire prevention methods. A huge problem I was working for Senator Gaines that I saw working in the Senate was that when local officials were trying to evacuate individuals during the Carr fire, they were having a hard time because they were so spread thin from fighting fires or stopping blockades. I think a bill that we could put through within the state of California through the OES is a bill that would allow volunteers to get state experience so they can learn through the state how to evacuate individuals. I think that would be a huge burden of relief for first responders. These are issues that we have been trying to fight for years now. And still, I have not seen these problems resolved. That is why I decided to try and run for the California State Assembly seat. I want these issues to get resolved, and I think I'm the right person to do that job. Let's work together towards rebuilding the Republican Party. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for your time, for your energy, for your dedication to representing the people. Audience, thank you for coming.
So what we're going to do now is the candidates will be around here for a little bit while we clean everything up. So we've got a few minutes if you want to mingle with them. That'd be great. And we hope that you enjoyed and were well informed in this debate. Thank you.